Aloha, namaste. This is Alexis with Radha Home Yoga, and this is actually the first live video I've done on Facebook. So hopefully it's all working out. Um, I wanted to give us a quick update on our lunar eclipse tonight in Hawaii. It's going to be 9:30 p.m. time, so it'll actually fall in. Excuse me, 11:30 p.m. Will be the full moon, where the moon and sun will be directly across from each other, and the lunar eclipse will start around 9:30 and end around 2 a.m. Tomorrow. So most places on Earth, it will be actually the on Monday, whatever date that is. And it's going to be in the star of Rohini. So this is right in the middle of Taurus. And Taurus is where the moon is exalted. So we feel more stable when the moon's in Taurus. We feel more grounded, more able to take care of our needs, more willing to take care of our needs, more willing to, compromise and do what needs to be done for everyone to get along. And that really practical and earthy quality of Taurus grounds our emotional state. So that sort of turbulent up and down quality that we can have with our moon um, gets rooted into something, into practical tasks and things that make our lives more beautiful, more lovely, and even things like eating or bathing or taking care of yourself are really Taurian things. So this is an exalted full moon, and it's joined, of course, the North Node, which is why it's an eclipse. And it's a penumbral eclipse, so it's a little bit far from the actual point where the moon, sun, and Earth would all be lined up. There'll only be like a faint difference in the actual shade of the moon, but the energy we're going to feel is still really potent, especially because this is 2 weeks before our full total solar eclipse. So the eclipses come in pairs, and this is the first one. The second one's going to be more powerful and definitely more intense, both because of the quality of total as opposed to penumbral. Also, due to the fact that there's going to be a pile up of planets with the south node and the sun in that solar eclipse. So right now it's just the moon and the north node in Taurus, and they're in the lovely star of Rohini. And Rohini is really the maiden, the beautiful maiden who is coveted by everyone, really. Her sisters are the other 26 nakshatras, the other stars, and she's said to be the favorite of their husband, the moon. And maybe a long time ago, the moon would always just stay in the one star of Rohini every night, and the other sisters got really jealous, especially the sister Jaista, who's the eldest, and she's the one right across the way where we're going to have our solar eclipse in 2 weeks. So there's a lot of that push and pull here, and she complained to her dad, and her dad told the moon that he was, needed to spend every night, one night with each of his wives. And he didn't listen. And so, because of this, one of the many variations on why the moon waxes and wanes, this is one of those variations where the moon was then cursed with waning. And so we have this energy of jealousy with Rohini, of seduction, of sexuality, almost innocent sexuality, a maiden-like quality where she's not necessarily trying to be that way. A quality of playfulness and youthfulness that also gets sort of taken advantage of, because there's also a more sordid tale where her father is also wanting to mate with her, to make beautiful beings on Earth. And so she ends up having to grow up quick and run away from that situation. So these are all themes that could be coming up for us in many ways. The ruler of this moon is Venus, and she is in her other sign of Libra right now. And while it's not ideal number of houses, it's 6 houses away, so there's this kind of strained quality. There's a lot of intelligence with our ruler right now, so we have a chance to really drop into what we find beautiful, what we find nice, and how we want to connect with other people, which could be really key coming into that solar eclipse in a couple weeks, because there's a lot of drama in Scorpio and a lot of shadow work we have to do, and we tend to project on people first before we own our own shadows. So this is a real time to just focus and center in on what we want. What do we want in our lives? What do we want for ourselves? And if you haven't yet received my free report, Rahu and Taurus and Ketu and Scorpio for all 12 signs, you can go ahead and sign up for my newsletter at radhahomeyoga.com. I put in the description here a link to that. And then you will find out exactly what house the north node is in for you. Now, the north node is where we're expanding, it's where we're sort of like magnifying whatever we're seeing. So there's a foreign quality to our experience with the moon. It seems like we're getting messages from other realms. There's this really otherworldly quality, but sometimes it's kind of, really a beautiful download that's coming from somewhere that's really entering us and giving us some kind of enlightened knowledge or wisdom. Sometimes it's more like delusions, and we're chasing things that don't exist, or we're living in this sort of state of uncertainty about what really is, and we see things as different and other than us, and we're creating a lot of divide and division where it doesn't need to be. Those are some of the things Rahu can bring about. So it really matters where it is in your chart, first of all, as to what area of your life is being sort of, obsessed over. Where are you really, like, with the big open mouth that Rahu is just a head, no body, just eating everything in sight. And where are you pulling away from, which is the eclipse in a couple weeks. So this is a foundational thing to understand where it's happening in your chart, and you can get that report just by signing up. And then we also have another report that's coming out, which is, which you will get also if you sign up, which is Jupiter in Capricorn for all 12 signs, because we just had that shift. We just had Jupiter shift into Capricorn and join Saturn, who's the ruler of Capricorn, and they're now conjunct, and they're moving closer and closer into, I think they're only 2 degrees away at the moment. So that intensity of our feelings, like about what we believe, what inspires us, the kind of path you take spiritually and how you access your wisdom and how you come to it is really getting sort of constricted. And there can be a lot of limitations that you're seeing, a lot of fear, a lot of anxiety, a lot of maybe even physical pain in your body, a lessening of health, a constricting of your health. And this feeling about time and pressure, and there's only so much time, and I have to get all these things done, and everything has to be really practical and have an end to it. And that's, that's a feeling we're going to have for a while. It's technically a year-long transit, but we do have Jupiter sort of dipping out for 5 months into Aquarius and then coming back in. So it won't be the full year that we'll have this exact experience. But Jupiter's also giving drishti to this full moon. So we can see that there's going to be some hopefulness on our full moon, and maybe using practices, teachings, traditions, and things that you are familiar with or that are part of your path that you're committed to. But also that it sort of still has that fearful, constricted quality. So it's Jupiter in his lowest dignity, in his state of debilitation, that we're talking about here. The fact that Saturn is joined is really helpful in many ways because Saturn's in his own sign. So there's a quality of, the meditator, a capacity to really let go and really allow ourselves to surrender all this sort of dogma or all this extra stuff that we want to believe or that makes us feel like we're practicing something spiritual, when oftentimes it's really just these motions that people go through that don't really connect us closer to spirit itself, where something like meditating or being quiet or being alone with yourself in that dark, painful, lonely place can be an extremely spiritual experience. So it's something that will, Saturn being there will sort of lift Jupiter up in dignity and intelligence, but also add more pressure and more of that constriction, less of the expansion that we often really want to feel with Jupiter, less of that sort of inspiration and generosity and feeling of really opening that we can have with Jupiter. So that drishti is happening too on this full moon. And it's really, the way I see it for right now is that this is the nicer of the 2 eclipses. This is the one that really falls in the exalted sign of the moon. It has even this sort of constrained Jupiter drishti. It has the ruler in its own sign, its own other sign in Libra. There's a lot of potential for beauty here, a lot of potential for connection, and also a lot of chance for each of us to really see what we value, because Taurus is really the natural second house. It's where we are attached to our values, and really go towards that. It's the part also of the nodal axis, which is the eclipse points. Where they're located is where eclipses will occur in that 1.5 year period. It's really the part that we're more interested in, right? Wherever Rahu is, that's the part that's exciting to us, that's interesting, that we're eating, right? It's our big open mouth that we're trying to eat voraciously that place. So it holds more energy for us. It's more exciting. Whereas the South Node is sort of exploding something under the surface that we're not as engaged with or as interested in being engaged with, because we feel like we've sort of already done that before. Rahu feels like something new. So what new thing can we do? So there's a lot more excitement. There's a lot more good feeling in this eclipse. And I really invite you to use that, to use the fact that it is feeling more blessed and feels more positive and feels more connective to both yourself and maybe others, and the earth for sure. And really tap into that positive feeling and the positive end of it. And then when you're in the eclipse in 2 weeks, hopefully you'll have a better, you know, you'll have a better idea of what's moving you forward and what sort of direction you want to be going in. And that can help with whatever's exploding for you, whatever's not really working out as well, and maybe under the surface that you're not paying attention to as much. We do have Mercury there already, joined the Sun and Ketu, the South Node. So we see that there's that energy already in Scorpio. Both the Sun and Mercury are joined the South Node there. So there's this, shining light from the sun, really blazing the light all over the shadow places, already happening. We're already feeling that. And Mercury there can make that confusing because it's not really our best place for communication. We tend to communicate really with a lot of emotion, maybe trying to control situations or people with our words, with our communication. We take things in a very emotional way. There's this quality with Scorpio where it's like we kind of want to sting before we get stung, because we're so scared, because there's so much fear. So hopefully this full moon can kind of pull us out of our fear a little bit with some grounded earth-based practices and some really lovely feelings and beauty and nurturing ourselves, so that we're in our best place for that eclipse in 2 weeks. I hope this was helpful. I wanted to keep this kind of short. It is the Sunday for us here in Hawaii. It's going to be tonight, so it's going to be 11:30 tonight that the actual moon and sun are directly across from each other, and also that max point of the eclipse is going to be right around then. But the beginning of the eclipse will be 9:30 p.m. here, and we're 2 hours before Pacific time, before the time in California. So you can kind of do the math from there, as to when you'll be experiencing that eclipse. If you'll be experiencing that eclipse, you can sit with that and do whatever really works for you. I'm personally going to go into a sweat with some women and really say our prayers in that way, and that feels very aligned for me. So hopefully there's some practices that feel very aligned for you in this time. And if you haven't yet signed up for that newsletter, go ahead and do that, and like, comment, and share. Thanks so much. Happy full moon and lunar eclipse to you. Namaste.